Why do we often recognize someone's worth only after they're gone? It's a strange flaw in human nature. We think we'll always have time to call them back, time to say what we really feel, time to show up, apologize, listen. And so we brush them off. We make excuses. We postpone that lunch. We forget the birthday. We leave the message on read because we assume tomorrow will always come, until it doesn't. Then one day, everything is still. You sit alone in a room they once filled with laughter, advice, or just presence, and the silence is deafening. Suddenly, you'd trade everything for one more moment. Not even a big one, just a glance, a hey. One more chance to say, you mattered more than I let on. If you've ever lost someone through distance, ego, or death, this story is yours. Because it's not just about grief. It's about awakening. It's about the brutal lesson most of us don't learn until too late. That people are not permanent. That life doesn't wait for us to become more grateful, more attentive, more present. The Stoics knew this. They faced loss daily, not just in theory but in brutal reality. Marcus Aurelius buried children. Epictetus was a slave, ripped from everything familiar. Seneca wrote letters to friends he feared would be executed before he finished writing. And yet they didn't collapse into despair. They used philosophy as their guide through the darkness. Marcus wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." To him, every goodbye could be the last, and so he chose to live, speak, and love as if it mattered, because it did. This story isn't about dwelling on death. It's about waking up to life. It's about not waiting for tragedy to teach you value. It's about recognizing the worth of someone before the moment is gone. It's not dramatic gestures or poetic speeches. It's noticing. It's replying. It's listening. It's remembering they won't always be around to text or hug or forgive. And if they're already gone, then let this be your turning point, not your collapse. Let this pain become perspective. Let it remind you how fragile and precious people are. Let it shape how you treat those who are still here. The Stoics didn't offer false comfort. They didn't say, everything will be fine. They said everything will end, and that is exactly why it matters. And in their words, in their clarity, we can find a compass. One that points us toward what's real. Connection, presence, and peace in knowing we gave what we could while we still could. So before you scroll on, think of someone. Someone who matters but has faded into the background noise of your busy life. Call them. Message them. Show up. Because one day, the only thing louder than their silence will be your regret. And the Stoics would want you to live before that silence arrives. Are you ready to act before it's too late? We live as if life is infinite, as if the people we love will always be just a call away, as if the ordinary routines we share, morning coffee, a familiar laugh, a passing take care, will play on a loop forever. We treat relationships like saved games, ready to be resumed whenever we feel like returning. But Marcus Aurelius saw through that illusion. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It wasn't morbid. It was honest, brutally honest. Because what's more dangerous than death is forgetting it exists. We build plans on top of sand. We get used to each other. We put off conversations. We postpone love. We shelve apologies and delay presents because we think there will be more time. But life doesn't promise more time. It only promises change. And change, when it comes, rarely waits for us to be ready. The illusion of forever is seductive. It makes us feel safe, but it blinds us to what matters most. Now, right now, someone who shaped your life is growing older, further, or quieter. Right now, someone is missing your voice while you assume they'll always be around to hear it. Right now, there are chances you may never get back. Moments that seem small but one day might become the very memories you crave most. We say later because it feels easier. Later is where we tuck our better selves. Later is where we place the call, show up, make amends. But sometimes later never arrives, and what's left is silence. Not just around us, but within. The silence of unsaid things, of attention we withheld, of love we rationed. There's a painful irony in how clearly we see once something is gone, how suddenly a voice, a presence, a touch becomes sacred in its absence. The chair they always sat in, the ringtone you used to ignore, the last photo that now feels like gold. We realize too late that the most important people often go unnoticed in real time. And here's the twist. Loss doesn't just take someone away, it takes away who you were when they were here. You can never again be the version of you that smiled at their jokes, rolled your eyes at their habits, walked next to them without thinking it mattered. That's why the Stoics urged us to remember mortality daily. Not to be fearful, but to be awake. To live with open eyes. To break the spell of permanence. Because when we see clearly that nothing is promised, we begin to cherish everything. So why do we assume we have more time with the people we love? Because facing the truth is hard. But ignoring it costs us more. The cost is regret, and regret is heavier than grief. Regret is knowing we had the chance and let it pass. But what if we didn't need tragedy to teach us value? What if we could learn to hold people close, they become a memory? We always think there's more time. Time to fix things, time to reach out. Time to finally say what we've been holding in our chest for months, maybe years. But as Seneca warned us, delay is the greatest waste of life. It snatches what is today by promising tomorrow. And yet, we keep trading the present for an imaginary later. Not because we don't care, but because we're afraid to feel the weight of caring fully now. How many times have you thought, I should call them, but didn't? I should say sorry, but didn't. I should visit, but found an excuse. Life is full of these small decisions. We brush them off because they seem minor, but they aren't. They're quiet warnings, soft reminders that time is always moving. That people don't stay in our lives just because we want them to. You might not remember the last words you spoke to them, the last message left unread, the last smile you didn't return because you were busy, tired, or distracted. But one day you will remember. When the noise of life dies down and their absence fills the room louder than their presence ever did, you'll remember every chance you didn't take. And here's the cruel part. Life rarely gives you a dramatic Warning. No drum roll before the final goodbye. No flashing sign saying, "This is your last moment with them." Often, the warnings come as tiny nudges, a sense that you should reach out, a sudden memory, a gut feeling. But we ignore them, convincing ourselves that we'll have another chance, that next week or next month will be more convenient. And then the silence arrives, the kind of silence that doesn't just sit in the room, it sits in your soul. You go to call them and realize they'll never pick up again. You think of something you want to share, and then remember they're not here to hear it. This silence is filled with echoes. The "I love you" you saved, the "I'm sorry" you buried, the "thank you" you thought could wait. Most people die with conversations unsaid. And those conversations don't just disappear, they stay with the living. That's the grief no one warns you about. Not just the loss of the person, but the loss of everything you never said, never did, never risked. But even regret, if you let it, can become a teacher. It shows you what matters. It shows you what not to postpone again. Regret holds up a mirror, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Because as long as you're alive, there's still someone you haven't called. Still someone who needs your presence more than your perfect timing. Still a chance to turn echoes into action. So when the silence hits, and it will, how do you begin to make sense of the regret? Can it become the starting point of a deeper life? Regret has a sting that lingers, sharp, personal, often silent. It follows you not with loud reminders but with quiet moments, an empty chair, a missed birthday, an unread message. It creeps into your mornings, your dreams, your sudden memories. But the Stoics, especially Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, believed regret does not have to be a curse. It can be a compass. Stoicism doesn't tell you to numb your emotions. It tells you to face them fully, directly, and with clarity. Marcus wrote, "Don't let your reflection on the whole sweep of life crush you. Don't fill your mind with all the bad things that might still happen. Stay focused on the present situation and ask yourself why it's so unbearable and can't be survived." Regret in this light is not about what was lost, but about what you now see clearly. Maybe the reason you feel this ache so deeply is because something inside you has awakened. Your awareness, your appreciation, your longing to be more present, more loving, more intentional. That ache is your soul refusing to sleepwalk through life anymore. It is not weakness. It is your conscience shaking you gently and saying, "You could have done better. And now, you still can." Regret reminds you of what you didn't do. Yes. But it also reminds you of what you're capable of still doing. It can push you to say the words you've been holding, to call the people you still can, to show up, not perfectly but fully, for the ones who remain. The danger lies in becoming paralyzed by regret, in letting it define your identity instead of shape your direction. The Stoic response is not to wallow, it's to reflect, then rise. Use the pain as information. Let it teach you how to live more fully. When you realize what you've missed, you can begin to see more clearly what not to miss next time. Think of it like rebuilding a house that once stood on broken ground. You do not erase the wreckage. You clear it. You study why it collapsed, and then you build stronger. Regret used wisely can be the foundation for a more meaningful life, not a weight around your neck. In fact, some of the strongest, most loving, most present people you'll ever meet carry the deepest regrets. But they carry them not as burdens, but as reminders. They've chosen to let that ache refine them, not define them. They don't deny the pain. They transform it into presence. So when you ask, can loss really transform us? Or does it just leave us broken? The answer depends on your choice. Will you let it open you or end you? Loss, in all its brutal honesty, doesn't ask permission. It arrives uninvited, through death, distance, silence, or a door that's slowly closed without you noticing. It doesn't just remove someone from your life, it removes a part of your identity, your rhythm, your assumptions. But the Stoics, especially Epictetus, believed that loss wasn't the enemy, it was the instructor. You are not upset by events, Epictetus said, but by your judgment of them. Loss, then, is not just about what happened, it's about what we think it means. We grieve the person, yes, but we also grieve the future we imagined, the moments that will never come, the version of ourselves we hope to become with them. But the Stoics didn't turn from this pain. They turned into it. They studied it, not to glorify suffering, but to extract truth from it. They saw every emotional wound not as proof of weakness, but as an opportunity to sharpen their awareness, realign their values, and reconnect with what truly matters. Think of the death of a friend. At first, all you feel is the emptiness. Their laugh gone, their advice now a memory, their absence a weight. But over time, if you allow it, that loss begins to clarify things. You begin to remember what they stood for, what they brought out in you, what you never said, but now will say to others. Their passing becomes a presence in your life, a standard, a reminder, a source of gravity. Or consider the quiet ending of a relationship. Not explosive, just a drifting apart. The pain still stings, but beneath that ache is insight. Where you didn't show up, where you ignored your needs, where you misunderstood love itself. That loss didn't punish you. It prepared you to love more honestly next time, more courageously, more consciously. This is the Stoic lesson. Pain is not always damage. Sometimes it's disclosure, the peeling back of illusions, the exposure of truth. Marcus Aurelius didn't see pain as random cruelty. He saw it as a forge. What stands in the way becomes the way, he wrote. The very thing that hurts you can become the thing that heals you, if you listen. Presence rarely teaches what absence does. When we have someone, we get comfortable. We assume, delay, ignore. But when they're gone, the silence becomes a teacher. A harsh one, yes, but an honest one. And sometimes, honesty is what the soul needs most. So ask yourself, what is loss? Trying to teach you that presence never did? Is it to speak your love more often? To show up when it matters most? To forgive while there's still time? Because loss, if you let it, doesn't just close doors, it opens eyes. And the Stoics knew this. The pain isn't the end of your story. It might be the chapter that finally wakes you up. Will you let it shape the way you live, starting today? Pain, in its rawest form, is a cry from the soul, not just for what was lost, but for what was never fully seen, never fully appreciated. But the Stoics believed that pain, when properly understood, is not a permanent weight, but a gateway. And grief, far from being a weakness, is evidence that love existed, that something mattered, that someone mattered. The question is, what will you do with that evidence? You can leave life right now, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is not a call to live in fear, but a call to live awake. When someone you love is gone, your grief does not dishonor them. Your disconnection from life does. The deeper Stoic insight is this: you can honor someone more by how you live after they're gone than you ever managed to do while they were near. Most of us look at loss and think, I should have said more, done more, appreciated more. That regret can bury us, or it can raise us. Seneca understood this well. He saw death not as a thief, but as a revealer. It shows us what we failed to value. And, if we're paying attention, it also shows us how to change that going forward. The person is gone, but their impact doesn't have to be. The grief becomes gratitude when you let their memory refine your present. Here's the truth. You cannot speak to them again. You cannot undo what you forgot to say, or fix what time ran out on. But you can speak more kindly to the people still. Here, you can say the apology now that you waited too long to give before. You can treat life, even in its smallest moments, as something sacred. That's the transformation Stoicism offers. Not the erasing of pain, but the refining of purpose. Pain sharpens appreciation, it strips away the noise, the ego, the petty worries, and it shows you what actually matters. Your time, your relationships, your words. The fact that you get to wake up today and choose a different way. Grief wakes the soul. It says, don't sleep through this life. You begin to see that every time you show up for someone, listen deeply, forgive sincerely, laugh freely, you are not just honoring them. You are honoring every soul you once lost. That is presence. And it is built not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of conscious living. So if the past cannot be changed, what can you do with the now? You can love better, speak more clearly, live with more intention, not out of guilt, but out of clarity, a clarity that only pain could have ever given you. The Stoics knew, when you turn pain into presence, you turn grief into wisdom, and wisdom is how you begin again. The Stoics did not numb themselves to life. They trained themselves to feel it fully while it was still here. Presence to them was not a spiritual cliche or a poetic phrase. It was armor. It was clarity. It was the only logical response to a world where everything, every relationship, every breath, every moment, is fleeting. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." In these words is not fear but urgency. And with urgency comes attention. You look around. You look closer. You don't just nod while someone speaks, you listen. You don't rush past the hug, you feel it. You don't save the "I love you" for tomorrow, because tomorrow might come with silence. Presence is not just noticing the moment. It's behaving as if the moment is sacred, as if it will end, because it will. Practicing presence before it becomes a memory is the Stoic way of loving wisely. Epictetus taught his students to hold their loved ones close with the awareness that they are mortal, not to be cold, but to be clear. When you treat each encounter as possibly the last, you stop bringing arrogance and assumption into your relationships. What enters instead is gratitude, tenderness, reverence. Think about this. How often do we walk past someone we love without truly seeing them? How often do we pick up our phones while they're speaking, or mutter half-hearted words while thinking of work or bills or scrolling, and then one day and they're not there, and suddenly we remember the tone of their laugh, the rhythm of their footsteps, the smell of their sweater. The very details we once overlooked become our most vivid memories. But you don't have to wait for absence to teach you appreciation. That's the Stoic superpower, to live as though you've already lost, and thus, to truly gain. Look at the person next to you, not with fear but with reverence. Listen to their voice like it's the last recording you'll ever hear, not to mourn them in advance, but to see them now. When you live like this, regret begins to vanish. You don't need dramatic goodbyes or eulogies filled with unsaid words. You said them while it mattered. You looked while they were still there to see. You loved while there was still time to feel it returned. This is how the Stoic faces life, not by avoiding heartbreak, but by making sure love was never left unspoken. So, can you live today in a way that leaves no room for regret tomorrow? Not by doing more, not by chasing faster, but by showing up fully, kindly, attentively. The Stoics believed that presence was the greatest proof of wisdom, and wisdom is what turns today into something eternal, even if it ends tomorrow. Begin with now. Every goodbye carries a whisper, a final message from the moment, the person, the presence now fading. Most of us only hear it when it's too late. But the Stoics challenged that. They believed we could hear it now while the moment still lives, if we're brave enough to listen. They understood something most people spend their lives avoiding, that love and loss are never separate, that every hello carries a shadow of goodbye. And instead of letting that truth make them cold or distant, it made them urgent. They loved honestly, spoke clearly, lived deliberately, because to pretend permanence was to live asleep, and they refused to sleep through the miracle of now. You don't have to wait for the funeral, the breakup, the distance, the silence. You can wake up to the value of what you have now. The friend who checks in, the partner who waits up, the parent who calls too often, the sibling you brush off. One day all of it will feel different, but the Stoic doesn't wait for that day. The Stoic acts today as if it already came and passed. So look again, speak softer, thank more, apologize sooner. Love while you can still feel the warmth of their hand, not just the memory of it. You don't need loss to be your teacher if you allow presence to be your practice, because now you know. We often realize someone's value after losing them. But that pattern is not inevitable. You can feel it before they're gone. And in doing so, you give them the rarest gift, your full awareness, your undivided heart, your real self. This is the ultimate Stoic realization. Loss doesn't need to be a tragedy. It can be a portal. It can wake you up. It can refine you into someone who no longer takes life for granted. And if you choose that path, then even your deepest pain will have served a purpose. Loss can destroy you, or it can awaken you. The choice is, and always has been, yours. What will you choose? Maybe you can't go back. Maybe the calls you missed, the words you left unsaid, the moments you brushed off, they'll always sting just a little. But that sting, it's not just pain. It's a sign that you are awake now, a sign that you've grown. Because awareness doesn't come from ease. It's born in loss, in silence, in moments you wish you could do over. But here's the truth. You can't change the past. And you don't have to. Because from this point forward, you can become someone who never needs to repeat it. The Stoics understood this. They knew that regret is the cost of ignoring the present, that the rarest gift is presence in not just being in the room, but actually being here, with your full mind, your open heart, your clear attention. So ask yourself, who in your life deserves that version of you? Who are you still lucky enough to hug, to hear, to thank, to sit beside in silence? Don't wait for the final moment to realize their value. Don't wait for the goodbye to discover what you had. Send this to someone you still have, someone you never want to lose. Not to impress them, not to explain, just to show up a little better than you did yesterday. Because today is the only guarantee you get. Use it well. And now, a question worth sitting with. Who is one person you will appreciate more starting today?